The story begins with a wealthy and successful man named Borges. One day, he visits the barbershop owned by George, a simple, good-natured man who has been cutting his hair for years. During their warm conversation, George makes a heartfelt request. He asks Borges to take his son Ignatius back to the city with him. George is a humble village man with limited means, and he believes the city can offer his son opportunities that their quiet life never could. Borges agrees, perhaps more out of kindness than careful thought. On the journey to the city, Borges speaks to Ignatius seriously. He tells the young man that this is a rare chance, a door that most people never even get the opportunity to knock on. He urges him to take it seriously, to be professional, sincere, and committed. When they arrive at Borges' home, he introduces Ignatius to his wife, Savarina, but he does not tell her the truth. Instead of explaining that Ignatius is the son of his barber, a working-class boy from a village, Borges tells Savarina that he is the nephew of his brother. Why the lie? Most likely to avoid any awkwardness or judgment, to make Ignatius's presence in their home feel more natural and equal. Savarina accepts this without question and warmly prepares a room for the young guest. Before leaving him to settle in, Savarina hands Ignatius a book, a simple, generous gesture, a quiet way of saying, "Use your time here well." The next morning, before going to work, Borges gives Ignatius another long talk about values, responsibility, and hard work. He then takes him to complete the paperwork for his new job, his first real step into adult working life. That evening, after a quiet dinner, Ignatius goes to his room and opens Severina's book, but the words on the pages cannot hold his attention. His mind begins to wander. He finds himself imagining Severina, her movements, her presence, the way she carried herself through the house. The image of her drifts into his thoughts and refuses to leave. By the next day, the daydream has followed him to the office. He sits at his desk, unable to focus. He looks at a female colleague in front of him, and without meaning to, her face slowly transforms in his mind into Savarina's. His work begins to suffer, and Borges notices. The tension comes to a head one evening at the dinner table. Borges' frustration finally breaks through. He scolds Ignatius sharply for his lack of seriousness, and the explosion of anger shatters the warmth of the household like glass. The outburst affects Savarina deeply, but not only because of the anger itself. It is the moment that makes her truly notice Ignatius for the first time. Watching her husband reprimand this young man, she feels something she did not expect and cannot immediately name. That night, she finds herself walking slowly down the hall toward his room. She stops at the doorway and watches him through the gap, sitting quietly on his bed, absorbed in the book she gave him, unaware he is being watched. She stands there for a moment, then walks away. She does not fully understand what she is feeling. She only knows that something has changed inside her. That night, Ignatius falls into a vivid dream. In it, Savarina is with him, close, real, present in a way that feels more true than waking life. At that exact moment, Savarina jolts awake in her own bedroom across the house, startled, as if something has touched her from the inside. The next morning, Borges decides to leave Ignatius at home rather than bring him to the office, giving him a day to rest. Ignatius picks up the book again and quickly falls asleep. Savarina, alone in the house with the sleeping young man, cannot settle. A feeling she has been trying to ignore keeps pulling at her. Eventually, she gives in and walks quietly to his room. She approaches him as he sleeps, drawn forward by something between curiosity, longing, and a feeling she has no name for. In his dream, at that same moment, he sees her getting closer. Something passes between them, undefined, unspoken, crossing the boundary between what is real and what is only felt. Afterward, Savarina returns to her own room immediately. She sits in silence for a long time, still and thoughtful, as if only now fully understanding the steps she has just taken, and not entirely sure what they mean. When Borges comes home that evening, something is different. He moves through the house slowly, looking at things without quite seeing them. He finds Savarina asleep in their bedroom, her face calm but holding something he cannot read. He checks on Ignatius in the other room, also asleep, also quiet, but the sight of him no longer feels right. A suspicion that Borges has been pushing aside quietly hardens into a decision. By the next morning, he tells Ignatius plainly, it is time to go back to his father. He is not fired from his job. Borges still allows him to continue working, but he will no longer live under this roof. As they leave the house, Ignatius turns back and looks at the window one last time. He hopes to see Savarina, even just a shadow behind the glass, even just a look that says she knows he is leaving. But Borges steps in between and tells him firmly that Savarina is unwell and cannot be disturbed. Behind the closed door, unseen by either of them, Savarina moves through Ignatius's empty room. She straightens the sheets, tidies the small objects he left behind, and smooths every surface back to how it was before he arrived. The room returns to silence. It holds no trace of him. It is ready once again for someone else. The car pulls away from the house. Ignatius sits in the back seat and looks out at the window one final time as the distance grows between him and everything that happened inside those walls. His eyes carry something unresolved, a hope that was never answered, a feeling that was never given words. But on his face, quietly, there is a smile. Not a sad smile, and not a happy one exactly. Something in between. Something that belongs only to him. He has not gained what he wanted. He may never see Severina again, but something real was felt, even if only in the space between a dream and a waking moment. And that, it seems, is enough to carry with him. A private memory. A secret dream that briefly touched the real world and then slipped away.